Detective story. Most people have a chance to see exciting events in their lives. I am the chief manager of an insurance office. I too have seen exciting things in my 30 years of work. My office had one wall that was covered in glass. I could see everybody who came into the insurance company. I like to study the face of new customer before I spoke to them. I decided what kind of people they were before they said a word to me. I learned to trust my first impression of people. The story I want to tell is about a man who came into the company one day. I watched him through the glass in my office. He seemed about 40 years old and he was very well dressed. He seemed very polite and he appeared to be quite a gentleman. He was talking to one of the clerks. Despite his appearance, I disliked this man as soon as I saw him. Suddenly, the man noticed that I was looking at him. He smiled at me through the glass, then he took some papers from the clerk and left. A few minutes later, I called the clerk into my office. Who was that man? I asked him. That was Mr. Julius Clinton, sir, the clerk told me. He is from the Middle Temple. What did he want? I inquired. He wanted one of insurance form, the clerk replied. He said that a friend of yours recommended this company. You know my name then, did he? Oh yes, Mr. Sampson, the clerk confirmed. You know your name. About 2 weeks later, I went to have dinner with a friend of mine. One of the other guests was Mr. Julius Clinton. He was standing near the fire. He noticed me and he asked our host to introduce him to me. Our host quickly brought him over. The three of us began to talk. I thought you named Mr. Sampson already. Our host said, no, Mr. Clinton told him. I followed your advice. I went to the insurance office, but I did not speak to Mr. Sampson. I did not want to disturb him. Did you come to the office to take out an insurance policy? I asked Mr. Clinton politely. Was it life insurance policy? It is not policy for me, Mr. Clinton said. It is for a friend of mine. He asked me to get the information for him. I don't know whether he will take out the policy. People often change their mind, don't you think, Mr. Sampson? Yes, I replied. We began to talk about other things. Your profession has suffered a great loss. Mr. Clinton said suddenly. I did not know what he was talking about. A loss? I asked in surprise. What kind of loss, sir? Financially one, Mr. Clinton laughed. I don't mean a financial loss, he explained. I was referring to Mr. Milton. Now I understood what he was talking about. Oh yes, Mr. Milton, I agreed. That was indeed a sad loss. He was the most brilliant man I ever known in the insurance profession. But did you know Mr. Milton? I asked. I know his reputation, Mr. Skilton told me. What a sad story it is. Young man like that suddenly give up his business and retire from the world. I have said that I disliked Mr. Skilton when I first saw him in the insurance office. I did not think he was really sad about Mr. Milton at all. I decided to ask Mr. Skilton some question. I want to find out more about this man. Have you heard why Mr. Milton left his business? I asked. I have only heard a story about it, he said. Apparently, Mr. Milton was unhappy in love. That is not the truth, I told him. The truth is that the lady died. She died, did she? Mr. Lincoln repeated, that is terrible. Poor Mr. Milton, how very sad for him. I still felt that Mr. Slington was not sincere. There was something false about his expression of sadness. Then he said to me, you are surprised that Mr. Milton's story affected me so strongly. I can see that Mr. Sampson, but I too have suffered a terrible loss recently. I have two knives, you see. One of the girl at 23 died recently. The other niece is also not well. The world is very sad place. Now I thought I understood Mr. Slington. He was a sensitive man who has suffered. I was angry with myself for disliking him. I watched him for the rest of the evening and he seemed to be a good man. He talked politely to everybody and everybody seemed to like him. I decided that my first impression of Mr. Slington was wrong. I spoke to our host about Mr. Slington. He told me that he had not known him for very long. He told me that Mr. Slington had taken his two niece to Italy for his their health. It was that one of them had died. He had returned to England afterward with his other niece. Now I felt that I understood Mr. Slington. I was deeply ashamed of my previous distrust of him. 2 days later, I was sitting in my office as usual. I saw Mr. Slington come into the outer office. As soon as I saw him, I disliked him again. Mr. Slington waved cheerfully at me and came into my office. I have come back, he said, because I want to find out what my friend has done with the insurance form. I want to know whether he has sent them back to the company. His family are worried about him, you see. They want him to buy a good insurance policy. Perhaps I can help, I said. What is your friend name? Mr. Slington, I asked him. Begbert he told me. I called the clerk into my office. I asked him to find out if a man called Beckwith had started an insurance policy with the company. The clerk searched through his file for a moment and then he brought me some paper. Yes, Mr. Sampson, he said. We received the form from Mr. Beckwith. He wants a policy for £2,000 and he asked Mr. Slington write a reference for him. Mr. Slington was not only my only visitor that day. Very early that morning, someone else had come to see me at my house. The visit was very private one. No one knew anything about it at all. Mr. Beckwith's insurance policy began in March. I did not see Mr. Slington again for 6 or 7 months. I went to Scarborough in September. Mr. Slington was with a young lady. He introduced me to her, explaining that she was his niece. Her name was Miss Niner. I looked at her carefully. I was sorry to see that Miss Niner did not look very well at all. As we walked along the sand, Mr. Slington pointed to some track in the sand. He laughed. Your shadow has been here, he joked to Miss Niner. Shadow? What shadow? I asked. My uncle is joking, Mr. Sampson, she explained. There is an elderly gentleman here, Scarborough. He travels around in hand carriage. I see him so often that my uncle called him my shadow. As she was speaking, we saw the old man hand carriage come into sight. There was frail old man inside. As the carriage was passing us, he waved his arm at me. He called to me by name. I went to see what he wanted. I was away from Mr. Slington and Miss Niner for about 5 minutes. My niece is very curious, Mr. Slington told me when I rejoined them. She wanted to know who her shadow is. His name Major Bank, I told him. He is a very rich man but a very sick one. He has just been telling me what pleasure you both give you. He says it obvious that you are very fond of one another. It is true, we are very close. Mr. Slington said very seriously, we are alone, you know. Since Margaret died, Miss Nina looked sad at her uncle's words. The memory of her sister was clearly still very painful to her. Suddenly she sat down near a rock on the beach. She was pale. Mr. Slington walked away from us. He too seemed very upset by his memories. Miss Nina began to tell me about her uncle. She said he was a very good, kind man. She told me that she knew she was going to die soon. She was worried about what would happen to her uncle when she died. I saw the Aunt Courage coining back towards along the sand as she was talking. Suddenly I interrupted her. Mr. Niner, I said urgently, I have something to tell you. You are a great danger. You must come with me and talk to the man in the anchorage. Your life depends on it. Miss Niner was very shocked by my words. I walked with her to the anchorage before she had time to object. I did not stay there with her for more than 2 minutes. Within 5 minutes, I saw her walking up the beach with a grey haired man. He had a slight limp. I know that she was safe with that man. I went back to the rock and sat down. Mr. Slington came back soon afterwards. I was surprised that his knife had gone. We walked for a minute. He told me that Miss Nine was very ill and he looked sad while he told to me. I replied politely to everything he said, but I was holding a weapon in my pocket as we walked along together. Mr. Sampson, may I ask you something? He suddenly inquired. What is the news of the poor man Meltham? Is he dead yet? No, I told him. He is not dead yet, but he won't live long. I am afraid. What a sad place the world is. Mr. Slington sighed quietly. It was November before I saw Mr. Slington again. This time in London, I had a very important appointment at Middle Temple. I arrived at the temple and went up some stairs. There were two doors at the top of the stairs. The name Beckwith was painted on one door, the name Slington was painted on the other. I went in the door marked Beckwith. The room was dirty and there were empty bottles everywhere. A young man got up when I entered. He walked very unsteadily and he seemed drunk. Slington not in yet, he said loudly. I will call him. He went in the corridor and began to shout loudly. Hi Julius, come in here and have a drink, he called. Mr. Slinton came into the room. He was very surprised to see me. Julius, this is Mr. Sampson. Beckwith introduced us. Boil the brandy, Julius, he said. He gave Mr. Slinton Flitty saucepan. Come on, boil the brandy the way you usually do. Mr. Slinton was embarrassed at my presence in the room. I could see, how is your nice, Mr. Slinton? I asked him quietly. I am sorry to say my niece has left me. He replied. She went away without a word of explanation. Beckwith held out the saucepan once more. Boil the brandy, Julius, he repeated. Give me what you always give me for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Boil the brandy, I tell you. Now Mr. Slington looked even more embarrassed. This was not a pleasant situation for him. He thought for a moment and then he spoke to me. You are a man of the world, Mr. Sampson. He began, I will tell you the truth. No, Mr. Slington, I said firmly. You will never tell the truth. I know all about you. You want to save your insurance company some money, he said calmly. You will try to argue that I was responsible for Beckwith's condition and for eventually death. But you won't be able to prove that, you know. You won't be able to prove anything. Beckwith suddenly picked up his brandy glass and threw it at Mr. Slington. The glass cut his forehead and blood began to flow down his face. Mr. Slington took out his kerchief and dried his face. As he was doing this, another man came into the room, a man with a grey hair who walked with a slightly limp. Mr. Slington looked at this man in surprise. Look very carefully at me, Beckwith cried out. You are a rug, Slington, and I have catched you. I took this room on purpose just to catch you. I pretend to drunkard in order to catch you, and I have done it. You will never escape now. You see, the last time you went to see Mr. Sampson, I had already been to see him myself. I went to his house very early that morning. We know everything. We know what you were planning. You thought you could kill me for the 2,000 pounds for the insurance policy. Did not you? You want to kill me with brandy. Did not you? But you wanted me to die quickly. That's why you also gave me small amount of poison. Mr. Slington was surprised by Beckwith's behavior. The young man did not seem at all drunk now. I took these rooms on purpose. Beckwith went on. I know what kind of man you are, you see. You are the man who already killed one innocent girl for her money, and now you are slowly killing another one. Slinkton laughed. Think how stupid you really are. Beckwith continued. You thought I was drinking brandy all day, but I threw it most of it away. You never know that I came into your room at night when you were asleep. I took all your papers, Slinkton. I read your journal too. It's got all the information about the poisons that you use. It explains everything I know. Where the journal is now. Slinkton looked at Beckwith questioningly. It is not your desk. Beckwith told him, then you are a thief. Slinkton told him calmly. He spoke calmly, but his face was white. I am your night shadow, Beckwith said quietly. Suddenly, Slinkton lost his calm and his courage. He looked frightened now, still he said nothing. I have watched you all the time, Beckwith said. I know that you were poisoning Miss Niner. I went to Mr. Sampson and told him everything. That man standing at the door is Miss Sampson's servant. The three of us have saved your nice life. Beckwith paused for a moment to look at Slinkton. Then he went on, you don't even know my real name, he said very quietly. You asked Mr. Sampson several times. If he had any news about Milton, I can give you news about him. I am Milton, he announced triumphantly. I loved your nice Margaret. I could not save her, but I promised to pursue you to the end, and I have done it, he cried. I have hunted you down, Slinkton. Slinkton now looked in horror at the man who was accusing him. He was unable to speak for fear. You never know my real name, Milton told him. You are seeing me under my real name now for the first time. You will see me again when you answer the charge of murder in a court. And I hope you see me in your imagination when they put the rope around your neck and the crowd is cried out of your death. Slinkton turned quietly away from us for a second and put his hand to his mouth. The room suddenly filled with the smell of some chemical. Slinkton gasped, ran a few steps and fell to the floor. He was dead. Milton and I made sure that Slinkton was dead. Then we left the room together. I have done what I promised to do, Milton said sadly to me. My life is ended now. I did everything that I could help him, but the poor man died a few months later.